Annihilator!
I don't like that name.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and let's talk about the Marvels. Is it the worst superhero ever made? Is Marvel Studios doomed to fail? Or is it the triumph of a studio and a harbinger of a new wave of heroes? Well, I gotta say neither. People are lining up to either dunk on this movie or overpraise it. I fall somewhere in between. I would say that this movie is like better than mid.
Well, okay, what's a mid movie?
The Flash. The Flash was perfectly okay. Now, this is not an MCU movie that I want to rewatch over and over, but there are certain scenes that I thought were perfect that I would want to watch again and again. This movie had a few scenes that I just thought were delightful, and nothing in this film hit me as outright bad. Like a little later, I'm going to talk to Colton Ogburn and Matt Singer about this. Now, Matt is the editor-in-chief of ScreenCrush.com, and right now I'm reading his terrific book he wrote called Opposable Thumbs: How Siskel and Ebert Changed Movies Forever. And inside of it, there's this great quote from the filmmaker Howard Hawks: "A good movie should have 3 great scenes and no bad ones." And by that metric, I think The Marvels was a success. Like, I'm not going to spoil anything that's not in the trailers, but for me, the great scenes were the one with the Flurkins, the one with the musical planet, and every scene with Kamala's family. In fact, the cons inject this picture with most of its heart. I recently went back and rewatched Ms. Marvel for a recap, and I saw that this family is something that we just don't ever get to see in superhero families. A family support network that supports the hero. Like Blue Beetle has that, and I love that movie too. And I think regardless of how you feel about this movie, everyone is going to love Iman Vellani. She is a real-life fangirl living out her dream, and that joy bleeds through in every single frame. I loved how her opening sequence brought us into her animated reality like the opening of her TV show.
Okay, person, I am ready for the holiday party.
We're having a holiday party?
Yeah, look, I got snacks and everything.
Doug, these aren't snacks, these are my socks, and I told you enough with my socks, please.
Well, we would have had snacks, but you never had time to go to the grocery. I know, because I am always here, always watching.
Yeah, how about instead of serving my socks, we eat this human food that I got for the holiday party?
But you never have time to go to the grocery store.
Oh no, dude, these snacks are not from the grocery, they're from Nuts.com. They're the sponsor of this video. Nuts.com has hundreds of varieties of snacks that you just cannot find in the grocery store, like these bourbon pecans or the milk chocolate gummy bears. Now, I love this variety because I can try things I would never try before, like crystallized ginger, but they've also got my old favorites like root beer barrels. Now, Nuts.com has everything from freshly roasted nuts, dried fruit, sweets, specialty flours, and more. There is literally something for everyone, and they have gluten-free options, organic, and other diet-friendly choices. But most importantly, everything here is high quality. They roast their nuts and pop their corn on the same day it ships, so everything is fresh and satisfaction is guaranteed. Like, I really like the Harvest Trail Mix and the bourbon pecans, and I'm actually not even kidding. I love these things. They're the best pecans I've ever had. I've never tasted anything like these, and actually I had to put them at the top of the cabinet so I would still have some free so I could shoot the ad with them. So at Nuts.com, you can auto ship your favorites to your house every month or shop a la carte at any time. So right now, Nuts.com is offering new customers a free gift with purchases and free shipping on orders of $29 or more at nuts.com/ScreenCrush. That is nuts.com/ScreenCrush, and click our link below. Now, back to what I was saying. And Brie Larson is just like a tremendous actor. She won an Academy Award, and I thought that this movie was way better for her than Captain Marvel. Like, I've made videos on this before, but I thought Captain Marvel was hindered due to her memory loss. We never got to actually know who Carol is, so we never had somebody to root for. And the movie tried to add all that in with a montage where she gets up all throughout her life, but without context, it seemed pointless. But in this movie, we actually get to see, Carol. She's grappling with her mistakes, and actually more on that in a bit because I do think that's one thing that's a bit of a weakness. Brie Larson is more settled and relaxed in this role, and the script lets her take advantage of her comedy chops while also hitting some dramatic moments. Like, I definitely think she is an actor and a character who could lead this franchise if her first movie and her appearance in Endgame would have set her up just a bit better. And the cat sequence, again, like a real winner for me. Like, I know it's playing to the cheap seats and that cats are like an easy clickbait way to get likes, but compare that to the really unimaginative needle drop of I'm Just a Girl from Captain Marvel, and you can really see how this is a stronger film for Carol Danvers. I am pretty biased though because I love cats, and that is why we designed these new shirts for our merch store. There is the Flurkin Hannibal mask. Doug is a Flurkin type monster, which somehow manages to be both cute and terrifying. And my personal favorite is the Higher, Further, Faster. And all of these cats are cats that are actually owned by the ScreenCrush team. See, shopping our merch store is the best way for you to directly support our channel. We also have our very first first live show coming up in Brooklyn, New York. The link for the tickets is below. And you could also become a member of our channel and get your very own custom Doug emoji. Now, we're new to the membership thing. We're adding new perks all the time, so let us know which ones you would like to see down in the comments. And there's also been a lot of criticism of Dar Ben, people calling her a Phase 1 villain, and I think that she's far better than that. Like, villains like Malekith or the Red Skull wanted power for the sake of power, or to make the universe dark and shoot Kool-Aid into the sky holes or whatever. Dar Ben, though, saw her entire civilization destroyed. Like, now she's their new leader. She wants revenge, and she wants to restore her empire. In a movie with 3 leads, I didn't need a lot of nuance from the villain. I mean, it would have been nice if it was in there, and when a movie's 100 minutes long, I'm sure there's plenty of space for her to be a bit more fleshed out, but I thought she was fine as is. And I will say that, like, looking at the MCU, this movie really highlights how bad and unnecessary Secret Invasion was. Like, I'm gonna dive really deep into this in another video, but they really should have, like, backgirled that show and given the tax rebate to the cast and crew of the studio jerked around for several months making them do reshoots. Now, not that this movie's perfect. There were some aspects of the picture that I don't think work, and the continuity with the larger MCU, and especially Nick Fury, is kind of all over the place. Well, that's all the nice things that I have to say about the Marvels, but I've got a guest here who I'm pretty sure is not going to say many nice things about it. We have ScreenCrush editor-in-chief Matt Singer, author of the new book Opposable Thumbs, How Siskel and Ebert Changed Movies Forever, and of course our own Colton Ogburn. And just a reminder, Colton is the guy who lives inside of our television, but he does not know it, so please don't tell him. So guys, I want to get right into it. Matt, what were your thoughts on the Marvels?
Oh, the Marvels. It mostly felt to me like, you know, there's this quote that I sometimes think about from Mystery Science Theater 3000, where one of the guys is looking at someone and says something along the lines of, "Boy, that is 40 pounds of bud in 20-pound bud capacity pants." And that's kind of what I feel about the Marvels. It feels like a movie this big was crammed into a movie this big, and they're just kind of shoving it in, and this doesn't fit, well, let's take it out. The explanation for this character, we don't have room for it, get rid of it. The things that would motivate these people to do the weird things that they're doing, it's gone. And what you're left with is like a skeleton of a movie, it felt like to me, with some very charming and charismatic actors who I enjoy watching. And I felt like I was just watching them like trapped in this really convoluted, chaotic mess of a story where they're just running all over the galaxy, and the reasons why are often unclear and opaque, and it doesn't really matter because we're just going to go, go, go. And it felt like at some point in the process, it was decided by someone somewhere that we can't turn this movie into, you know, the Avengers or Iron Man or one of our great things, but what we could do is just make it move really fast. If we cut out a lot of stuff, we could make a zippy, you know, quick, a movie that moves so fast you might not even notice that it doesn't make sense, and it's kind of frustrating in that way. And that's mostly how I felt about it. I felt like I was watching a lot of movie that had been trimmed down into a really little movie, and the stuff that had been cut out felt to me like maybe if that had been left in, it might have made it for a more satisfying, more logical experience.
Well, you know, your review is up on ScreenCrush.com, and it's as always, a lot of fun to read. I recommend everybody check it out, even if I don't necessarily agree with everything you just said, but we'll get into that in a second. In the review, and also you have a really great like plot holes or unexplained questions. It's really funny. That's up on the site too. In the review, you do call them out for Nick Fury, and I want to like focus on that just for a second, because I think with an MCU movie, we can judge it on 2 levels, right? We can judge it as just as what it is, a movie. Did it work? Then the movie didn't work for you. But you can also look at it like, oh, this is cool. This sets like Captain America: Civil War was a good movie, and it also set up the next Avengers movie, or it tied in good to the last movie. This movie takes Nick Fury and Secret Invasion, and I think makes that show even worse. What did you think about how Nick Fury was incorporated into this film?
Well, in a vacuum, I mean, he's fine. It's Samuel L. Jackson, and he actually looks like he's having fun. You know, he's joking around. He's making a lot of quips. He's charming. He's Sam Jackson, and unto itself, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But as you said, this comes right on the heels of this TV show, Secret Invasion, where Nick Fury suffers these terrible losses and has like a crisis of faith and is very dark and grim. And I don't know in terms of like literal like time, like how much time has passed between that movie and that show. but it's almost like it did not happen. And I honestly, I asked you, I mean, this is true. When we came out of the movie, I asked you, Ryan, was this movie supposed to happen before Secret Invasion? Because I feel like both of them would make a lot more sense if the orders of them were reversed for like 10 different reasons. And I genuinely was confused by why the Nick Fury of Secret Invasion was suddenly this wisecracking comic relief character who, again, is amusing and charming, but it's like I cannot in my mind reconcile those. They're like two totally different people.
He ends the show happy, Matt. Happy that Skrulls are being persecuted
very
on Earth,
happy.
but he gets to go back to the space station with his wife, who's not in the movie. The Khans are there. The Khans are on the space station, but his wife isn't.
Who's never mentioned in the movie. It doesn't come up. The space station is falling out of the sky. He doesn't think to check on her, ask about her, make sure she's okay.
Which is another. Okay.
It is another reason why it would make more sense if they were swapped. If we're not supposed to know about his wife existing, then it wouldn't be weird that he's never asking about her or talking to her or thinking about her or looking after her ever. Yeah.
Well, she's a secret wife, though. He took his wedding ring off when he went home. I don't know if you remember that little detail in Secret, but she's a secret wife, and that explains why she's not appeared in the MCU before.
Right.
You know me. Sure. I'm always willing to alley-oop and dunk on Secret Invasion. I do, before I get over to you, Colton. Matt, I want to follow up on one thing. You talked about how the movie was too much stuffed into like too short of a time, and I agree with something you mentioned in your review, that there were no subplots. There was just very much like everybody had like Carol wants to be redeemed. Monica wants to... like her whole thing is making up with Carol. Kamala Khan, just happy to be there, and God, am I glad that she was. Kamala's like, I've never heard anybody give a bad review of this movie and not praise Iman Vellani's performance. I thought, though, that the movie needed more. I thought that it was a little too simple. I'll talk about this later on, but I thought, like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's Spaceballs. They're pulling the atmosphere and the water and the natural resources. It's an imperialism metaphor. Great. And I wanted to see, like, some more, like, fleshed out around the edges of that. I was able to follow the plot just fine.
But we don't disagree. I'm saying that I want to see the longer version of this movie where everything that happens is more motivated by character details and backstory, and we understand why people are doing the things they're doing, like Nick Fury bringing the Khan family into outer space. I have to believe at some point in the process that made sense. In the movie, it does not. In the final film, it is one of the most baffling things I've ever seen happen in a Marvel movie. I cannot, and I've sat and I've tried to think of a reason, and I cannot do it. You tried
to get a no prize?
I tried to get the no prize on that. And it is just...
because they capture the Kree. It's not like the Kree... If they would have had a line, oh, boy, push the Kree signatures on this house, they're going to come after you. We got to get you up to Saber. Something like that could have worked, but they just ignored it. Colton, you've been very patient. Please tell us what you thought of the Marvel. And we haven't actually talked about this yet. I have no idea. I'm excited to hear your raw opinion here.
Right. Well, I liked it. I thought it was fun. Every point Matt made is a very valid point. Fury went from having trouble getting around and being very angry in Secret Invasion, and now all of a sudden he's back to traditional Fury. That was odd. I hadn't thought about switching the releases or watching them in that direction. I think that would probably be better. But to your point about it needing to be longer, I think this tighter edit might have been what saved it. Because I'm afraid that, like, all of the great stuff you're pointing out that wasn't great about the movie, I don't think having more of that would have made it any better. Like, I'm fearful that had they kept maybe another half hour of this movie in, it may have suffered because maybe that stuff just wasn't good. I mean, yeah, to your point, it would have been nice to see, like, Kamala's mom, like, say to Fury, you take me to my daughter or something. That explain little stuff like that. But overall, I think the tighter... fast, funny edit of the movie may have been what made this like watchable. It did feel generic. It felt like a little bit of a generic Marvel movie, but I'm kind of okay with that. I'd rather generic than bad. And like stuff like Secret Invasion I felt was bad. But yeah, like Ryan mentioned, Miss Marvel, definitely the best part of this movie. Every time she would scream, whether it be at a flirkin or falling through the sky, I felt like I could relate to her character. And that was another thing I really liked about her character, is how we're living in this very lived-in superhero world. So it was nice to get to experience, like, through new, fresh eyes, all of the, like, extravagant stuff we're seeing through Kamala. I thought that was cool. The exposition, I've talked before in other discussions how I'm not a fan of exposition, really, even when it's done well. I'd rather you show me than tell me. But I thought that this movie did the exposition okay. I really liked how when they addressed Monica having powers, she's like, I walked through a witch hex. And then
Yeah.
that would have been dumb, I think. That would have been a dumb line if not for
Yeah.
Kamala's mom coming in and saying, of course you did. Good for you. I thought that was a great follow-up.
And I think that the family and Kamala did a great job of grounding the universe in a way. Like in the MCU now, we're dealing with like, you know, immortal robot gods and, you know, Carol Danvers who has all these powers, and there's very few people who are like just flat out relatable to us. And that's what I loved about Kamala Khan in this movie. I did have a question for both of you though. Matt, you can answer this first. You know, the Marvels was pushed back several times. I've heard rumors that it swapped places with Quantumania because they thought the visual effects in Quantumania were further along. There's, you know, other reasons at play. Maybe at one point it was delayed because of the strikes. Who remembers the timeline at this point? But if it was delayed to give the visual effects people more time, then what do you think the result was? How were the visual effects in this movie?
I thought they were mostly fine. It was not. I certainly wasn't sitting there going, the problem with this movie are the visual effects. There are other problems with this movie, in my opinion, but I think visually it looks okay. I mean, there's some fun like fight sequences and stuff. To me, the larger issue on that side of the movie was, you know, they give the film this gimmick where they are switching powers constantly, and they're you know, the three main heroes are constantly switching places, and you know, the rules of how exactly it works are eventually explained, but to me, like, they didn't seem to really entirely match up with what we were seeing. And I think in a larger sense, that idea, I think, really could have lent itself to some truly, like, clever, inventive, interesting action sequences. Mm-hmm. And what we really got was basically, like, again, chaos is a word that I think of a lot for this movie. It was like, what they did instead was a lot of like crazy, chaotic kind of comedy sequences where, you know, everyone's jumping around and Kamala Khan is screaming, and it's amusing, but it felt to me like the idea of people switching places could have resulted in a really like dynamic and unusual like action sequence that we hadn't seen in a movie like this before. And I thought the finished result was just kind of there. It was more to be kind of quirky and funny than it was to be, wow, look at this amazing complex action sequence that they made out of this. So yeah, it looked fine, but that was kind of, to me, it felt like a lot of this movie, it felt like a little bit of a missed opportunity.
And you raise a good point. There's that trope of like the two escaped convicts who hate each other, but they're chained together, like forcing people into a situation together. And the movie kind of took advantage of that with, you know, Carol being forced to be with her fangirl and Monica forced to be with this person that she resented. But yeah, I agree. They could have done more with that. Colton, I'm sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, speaking of the switching, I think there was a huge missed opportunity with what they could have done with that whole concept. I would have liked to have seen a Freaky Friday with Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel. No disrespect to Monica, but I feel like that would have been a fun movie. Seeing Miss Marvel in the body of her, you know, icon, and then having, you know, the famous immortal like god type creature that Captain Marvel is now in a high school, you know, new superhero body. I think there could have been a lot of fun stuff you could have done. And to Matt's point, they introduced this concept. That's the whole concept of the trailer. And then it did just kind of come off a little gimmicky. I mean, I appreciated it to the extent that, like, the look on Carol's face when she finds out that they're not switching anymore and she's kind of disappointed by it. That was good for, like, to show us where she's at in her life. But yeah, I would agree with Matt that there was so much more they could have done with the switching scenario.
Matt, a little bit earlier, I talked about how in your book you brought up this famous quote from Howard Hawks that a good movie needs 3 great scenes and no bad ones, right? And I know Siskel and Ebert, the subject of your book, would quote, at least Ebert would quote this a lot when he would talk about different films in his reviews. And for me, this movie has at least 2 great scenes. And I don't think everybody who is going to buy into these scenes the way I did, but I loved Aladdin, you know, the musical Planet, and I loved the memory sequence. And I'm curious where you guys, because I feel like this is going to be pretty 2 divisive sequences, But I kind of think the studio went, okay, these are great, and if these work, then the picture works. Matt, what do you think?
Well, again, I think those scenes are fine. It's the way that they're stitched together into the story. It's like, why did we go to this planet, and why is Carol is married to this guy, and everyone but him is singing, but he's bilingual, which I guess is a cute line, but you know, and suddenly they're you know, he'll like walk up to her wearing this really elaborate headpiece and helmet or whatever and necklaces, and then all of a sudden a second later they're all like magically gone. And I just
again, they have the 2D thing. They
have magic.
Explain that in
it just
movie.
Honestly, what it felt to me like, again, it felt like that was like a much longer sequence that had been trimmed down to the absolute bare minimum of a you know, a whimsical song and a dance scene, and then it's back to the action. And
so you're telling me
the
film left you wanting more.
Well, but I've said that repeatedly. I wanted the movie to be longer. That's what I was saying. I mean, that's the thing. It's like it seems like a really interesting setting for a movie like this that we don't understand, we don't get to explore. It seems to just be like this one plaza, a set basically that they built, and you don't really get to understand the place. Whereas, you know, a great science fiction movie, you might actually get to like learn about this culture in this world and explore it a little bit. And in this movie, it's moving way too fast to do anything like that. And so, like, yeah, again, individual moments. There's funny moments, charming moments. The actors are great, but it's just you barely get accustomed to where you are before we're already done here and we're going to the next location for the next big fight scene. And it just felt to me like it was you know, I guess if you want a movie that's just paced to the gills and never stops for a moment's breath, you might like this movie. But to me, it was like, again, because you have these three really good actors, interesting characters in here, and like the number of times they get to just talk to one another without screaming or without flirkins or without fighting, or without having to figure out how to use their powers together. There's not that many moments. And, you know, again, like
two or three, for sure.
To what Colton was saying about, like, maybe the movie would be stronger, even though Monica is lovely and wonderful, like, maybe the movie would have been stronger as a two-hander. I mean, I had that thought, too, because it already is overloaded. You know, if the fighting was going back and forth between two people instead of three who are just kind of jumbled around, you know, it might have been clearer. It might have been easier to make sequences that were kind of more clear and easier to follow and make more dynamic if you didn't have to constantly cut between like three locations or three people doing three things. And then just the idea that, that these characters, there's so little time for them to interact that adding a third one into the mix, who of course has a relationship with Carol and is, you know, like is important in that sense. But it's just like space is at a premium here, guys. And we don't have a ton of time to service anybody, really.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off. I think you're right. Tiana Paris is great. I love Tiana Paris. She was great in WandaVision. She's great in Mad Men. And she got the least to do out of this, apart from like her already established relationship with Carol, which again, that's all she wants in the movie. But like I said, I'll get into things I didn't like a little bit later. Colton, what about you? Did the memory sequence and the dance sequence work, or did it take you out of the film?
I thought the memory sequence was fine. I do want to complain about the musical planet. I'm a musical guy, okay? I love musicals. I could not stand it. When the second it stopped, I was so grateful that it was over, because I was like, I don't think I could have taken one more second of singing. But kind of a contrary point to that, I would have enjoyed it had they given more reason for us to even be on that planet. What is the relationship between Carol and this prince? I thought personally, we were gonna like get to spend like the second act of the movie on this planet, and we were gonna get to slow down and kind of digest everything. Maybe we'd learn that like I thought the prince was going to be gay, and like Carol was like, you know, filling in for him. And then we could, you know, because maybe this planet is like, you know, they have some bigotry on this planet where they're not so accepting, and we could have some social commentary there. And it'd be a nice, you know, story to just kind of sit back, relax, and give this planet some meaning, give this character some meaning, show what Carol's been up to. I thought that would have been fun. But instead, it's just, to go back to the word gimmick, it's just like, oh, okay, this is a planet where people sing. The bad guys show up almost instantly, blow it up, they leave, and we never even find out what happened to the planet. I don't think they even mentioned what went down. Were they destroyed? Did Carol go back and check on them? None of that. So it just felt not needed, I guess. So I'm kind of going all over the place here. Like I'm saying, maybe tightening it was better. That's my opinion, just from a post-production standpoint. Like maybe they had what they had to release it. But yes,
for
from
a guy
writing
who says he liked the
standpoint,
movie, it sounds like you didn't like the movie.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Your compliment was that it was generic. That was when you said it was good.
Well, because Secret Invasion was so awful, Marvel has seemed just all over the place, and I can say that I genuinely did enjoy the movie. I laughed, I gasped, I had a good time. It's not Citizen Kane. It's not a great film, but to be fair and look at what has come before it, it was refreshing to just be able to sit in a Marvel movie and not do this the entire time. Like, oh God, what are they doing? It was fine. I wasn't offended by this movie, I guess is what I'm saying.
Put it on the poster. I was not offended! Exclamation point.
And I like the Flash.
I just wanted to know, why did Monica have to close the hole in reality from the other side? Just stay on this side, Monica! Don't go over there! You're just closing it up with your magic laser, sewing kit. What are you doing?
Matt, because she had to meet Beans.
She had to go meet Kelsey Grammer. I mean, that is the reason. But you're sitting there going, she even says, like, I always knew I'd have to stay. I'm going, what? Why? Yeah. Just come over here. Come on. Yeah. Anyway.
And you can read about that plot hole and many more on Matt's piece on ScreenCrush.com. Again, Matt is the author of the brand new book, Opposable Thumbs, How Siskel and Ebert Changed Movies Forever. It is great. I highly recommend you get your copy hot off the presses while you still can. Matt, Colton, thanks guys for joining me. And now I want to tell you guys what I did not like about the movie. So like Matt said earlier and in his review on ScreenCrush.com, you can see how this movie was edited to pieces. And you know what? I get on board with that. There were all these rumors about the usual Marvel massive reshoots. And I think the studio probably overnoted director Nia DaCosta. Marvel needs to watch that, because they used to be a studio that was known for giving big budgets to low budget voices. And now they're getting a rep for curbing creativity to follow their house style. So like we said earlier, the movie is only about 100 minutes long, which is kind of refreshing because these movies, especially team-ups, have tended to swell like to well above 2 hours. But I agree with Matt and Colton that we needed more in those missing 20 minutes. Like the film barely has any subplots, it's very zippy from one thing to the next. Now I think that Tiana Paris is great. She's terrific in Mad Men and WandaVision, but we don't really know anything about her except that she's mad at Carol and she's sad about her mom dying. In fact, most of the main problems with this movie were just how it tied into the MCU. I thought that the backstory of Carol killing the Supreme Intelligence would have been a much more natural sequel to the first Captain Marvel movie. And Secret Invasion really muddied the waters with the Skrulls on that show looking for a home, when the home that we see in this movie seemed quite nice. And the multiverse saga probably should have been more front and center in this movie. Like, I think the studio realized that at the last minute, as the final trailer had a mention of the multiverse and even a clip from the post-credit scene that teased the X-Men. But also, going back to Ms. Marvel, the weakest part of that show was like everything that had to do with the Jinn. And I heard rumors that some of the creatives on the show wanted to remove them entirely and make Damage Control the antagonist, which would have been way better. But now we see why that was not an option. They needed the Jinn to set up the bangle for this movie. Like, sometimes interconnected storytelling can really bolster the films, and sometimes it can really hinder the stories that creators are trying to tell in the here and now.
Hey there, I heard you were having a holiday party with bourbon pecans from nuts.com.
There were.
Oh man.
But I ate them all. But actually, I auto-shipped them on nuts.com, so they should be here now. Great, thank you so much. Just a reminder, click our link below to shop nuts.com today. Overall though, I liked what was in the Marvels. I just wanted to see a bit more of it. That's just my thoughts on the movie. What were your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.